Welcome back. We're moving towards the final presentation of today at stage 1. And I'm glad to welcome our speaker, Rezza Moyeni, Chief Technology Officer of Cultural Infusion. Rezza, welcome to the Global Inclusion Online Forum.
G'day, Konstantin and everyone there. Hi from cold and freezing Melbourne. It's 1 in the morning here.
Glad to you stay so late or so early to be with us. So thank you so much for your participation. As an introduction, Rezza is currently managing a diverse team of data scientists, developers, designers, and educators, and also project coordinators. And today he will speak about the analysis of cultural diversity in different countries using data-driven methodologies. Actually, myself, I was anticipating this presentation a lot because I do love science and I do love coming to or addressing the DI issues from the scientific point of view, and obviously data is the essence of a scientific approach to any issue. So, Rezza, glad to pass this floor to you. The floor is yours, and I will be back after your presentation to help you handle the questions.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Konstantin. I also very much enjoyed your talk, which was about what's wrong with percentages. That was totally timely and thoughtful. I was listening to all the previous talks, and what was interesting for me, I was thinking that only on LinkedIn there are 200,000 people with a job title as diversity and inclusion managers or professionals or culture people. We didn't have this number of professionals in this space 5 years ago, 10 years ago. So it means that we are working in such fast growing and developing space. So in the last 7 years, we are working in a new data-driven approach to measure and map and benchmark diversity within organizations and workforce. Data, information, and technology are absolutely mesmerizing. So how we can get the best out of this? What I'm going to talk about has been implemented in a web-based platform called Diversity Atlas. It's a result of 6 years of research and development and incubation, and now it's being used by many Australian organizations, many international firms such as Amazon is using this platform to map their global workforce, United Nations World Food Program, and many museums around the world are now using this program. So delighted to be here. So to start with, usually in business, the effect of cultural diversity has been thought to be measurable. There are so many interesting and advocacy papers or articles about the benefits of diversity, like the famous Deloitte report in 2017, which says that diverse teams, which refers to gender in their report, are 6 times more likely to be innovative. Or the McKinsey report, which was published in 2020, talks about diverse teams against, with a focus on gender, are 35% more likely to work better and to have a better return on investment. What it illustrates, these numbers, is that even through a narrow filter such as gender, diversity has an impact. But none of them show how to measure the diversity itself. Can we ask, how can we measure diversity? Can we ask what's the benefit of other aspects of diversity into business? We need a more broader, a more inclusive, and more effective approach in this space. Gender parity is fantastic, but what about the other aspects of diversity? So when we started this domain, measuring mapping diversity 7 years ago, people were asking us, why do you want to measure diversity? Why do you want to map diversity? Thankfully, these days, no one asking that question anymore. The challenge we had at the beginning was, first of all, there's no globally accepted definition of diversity. And the second one was how we measure that. So I'm putting here 4 main problem statements, research questions for all of us, and that's where we started. The first question is, can diversity within culture be disaggregated And if so, can we measure each of those elements? The second question is, if we disaggregate culture into different elements, what about the aspects of culture which are not measurable, which are not quantifiable? Can harm come from this attempt? If we disaggregate culture into different elements and we study the importance of each element, are they having a relative importance? How can we measure the relative importance of each pillar of diversity? And the last but not the least is, what is the definition of self-identification in different societies based on the pillars that I'm going to explain in a minute? Cultural diversity until now has been poorly and narrowly defined. It was analytically neglected, underutilized, ineffectively used to creating exclusive narrow strategies and disengaged teams. When I say lacking, I mean lacking to measure, benchmark, track, and quantify the value. This is the challenge that we try to address. Our approach was, we tried to have a methodological approach to this area with a team of anthropologists, data scientists, linguistics, university lecturers, and scholars to address this problem in a robust, with a robust research methodology. The first thing is to scientifically define the pillars of diversity and attributes of the culture. The second one is to have the most inclusive, the most accurate database of different ethno-linguistic and religious data sets around diversity, to have an intersectional analysis of all the pillars that I'm talking about, and implement them in a very simple, highly user-friendly platform. What is really important here is that it's really important to engage your audience with what you do, to show them what you do. When people see their diversity, they become engaged. It's not about asking people what's their diverse background is or what's their religion is. It's a matter of how you use that data. Asking the question is the beginning, but it's not enough. You have to use that data. You have to convert that data to create the value. So we were very grateful to work with many research partners, including Australian National University and Dialogue of Civilizations, to work on this space. I mean, technology is inevitable. The simple mobile device that we use, this iPhone is known as an American product, but 110 different countries contribute to build this product, from all the ICs, CPUs, programs, software, hardware, everything. Every aspect of our life is diverse. We need to understand that better. You may have seen this pyramid. It's known as wisdom pyramid, sometimes as a data hierarchy. So what we try to do, we try to start with the data. So it's a data journey. It demonstrates how the deep understanding of the subject emerges and passing through these steps. So if I say 22, it's just a data. It's nothing. It's a number. But if I say that I'm 22 years old, which is probably half of my age, that becomes an information. So you know that I'm 22 years old. But if I say that I work in a team, that the average age of females are 36 and the average age of males is 38, this becomes a knowledge. It tells us who we are in this team. But if I be able to get to the point to say that, for example, as an example, if I be able to measure the happiness of the people, and I find out that the happiness of the male people above 45 years in my team declines with the growing age, and I can do a step 1, 2, 3 to make them happier and keep them happier in my team, that becomes a wisdom. So the whole journey is how you can start with the data, transform that into information, knowledge, and wisdom. I really would like everyone to if you have any questions, any insight, any feedback, I really would like you to put that in the chat box. I have two of my colleagues, Michael and Quincy, helping me in this presentation in the chat box. Would love to hear your feedback. Would love to hear from you. We really would love to see that where you are in your diversity journey in your teams or in the community that you deliver your services. How much they have data-driven approach in that space or what you do. So another concept is 3 dimensions of diversity. In many approaches, people consider diversity as difference. That's one aspect of diversity, which we call it variety. And variety means the absence of homogeneity in a team. So if I say that I'm Persian and you're Italian, or if I say that I'm atheist, you're a Jewish, or I'm a Muslim, you're a Buddhist, these are different aspects of diversity of us. This is variety. There's a second aspect of diversity. There's a second dimension of diversity, which is balance. Sometimes we go to large organizations and they say that, yeah, we are very diverse. We have 60% of our staff born overseas. But you walk around the office in different levels, you see that the IT department looks more Southeast Asian people, and the account department looks more East Asian people. And there is, as you go north to the upper levels, you see a hegemony of monoculture happening that it's not balanced. They have variety, it's not balanced. Exactly the same concept applies to ethnicity or religions. Sometimes everyone in a team were born in the same country. But as you go north to the organization, you see that you have less ethnic diversity in the team. You have less religion. You see everyone in one group are following that religion. As you go to the north, you have less diversity of religions. And the last but not the least is disparity. And by disparity, I mean the distance between different diverse elements of the team. So for example, if you have a team of people speaking Portuguese and Italian and Spanish, and you have another team speaking English, Swahili, and Brazilian, Japanese, for example, you would say that probably the second team is more diverse because the disparity, the distance between Japanese language and Swahili language is greater than the Spanish and Italian. And that's disparity. That's really important if you be able to address and measure and look at disparity between organizations. So the journey to trust, engagement, performance, all these beautiful things start with data. You wouldn't run a marketing campaign without understanding the customer. So how do we want to run a business without understanding the workforce? It's really important. That's a simple question. Recently, there was a research in Australian organizations. It showed that 12% of the companies feeling that they're pro in their diversity and inclusion journey. About 8% said that, no, we're good. We don't want anything. Thank you. And 80% of organizations were thirsty to have a better D&I approach. That's fantastic. So it means about 90% of the workforce are open to this space. So a grounding assumption of this work is that cultural diversity of a group can be understood in relation to primary categories of the culture. And these categories, based on the literature, are worldview. I'm referring to secular and non-secular beliefs, language spoken, the country of birth, and the ethnicity of the people within a group. So based on this assumption, we proposed an index for illustrating, measuring the cultural diversity of a team. So the basis of the method that we developed is a normalized entropy of the data pertaining to the ethnicity, countries of birth, languages, and worldviews of a community. It's also based on theory of probability and L1 norm to normalize that. So we measure each pillar independently with the top formula. And on the bottom one, we use a normalized weighted index to have like an average number of that. So if you do not have your calculator next to yourself, I'm not going to bother you. So I'm just putting a simple example here to explain how the formula works. So if you have a team of 100 people who were born in Iran, all of them Persian, all of them speaking Farsi, and all of them are Muslim, for example, the diversity is 0. And if you have 100 people in your team who were born in 100 different countries, they're speaking 100 different languages and no language in common. They come from 100 different ethnic backgrounds, and they believe in 100 different gods. The diversity of that team is 100, and whatever in between bands between 0 and 100. It's a very easy way of explaining how the measurement works. And only by this example, you would say that, oh, then 100% diversity is not that good. So if I have 100 people speaking 100 different languages, how are they going to communicate? Which is true. There are more literature about challenges of diversity compared to benefits of diversity. In a couple of slides, I'm going to say, what is the optimum level of diversity that you need in your team? That was just the beginning. So we collected the most inclusive and engaging database of ethno-linguistic and religions around the world. So we worked with universities, linguistics, anthropologists, and now we have a database of 11,200 languages in the team, and we do analysis of their zones and macro zones of their roots. We have a database of 8,200 plus religions, branches, and denominations. And we have a database of 8,500 ethnic groups around the world. And of course, country of birth, which we respect to UN countries and dependent territories, including their parents and grandparents, and also we address the citizenship here. What I'm saying here, this is really important. This level of detail is really important. This is the data resolution. This is an accurate data that I'm talking about. So if I'm asking about people's cultural background, and I ask, are you black, white, or Hispanic or Asian? This doesn't show your diversity of your workforce. It's like looking at an old 90s 12-inch black and white screen looking at your data. These days, people have an 85-inch full quality, full color, high brightness, full contrast, beautiful screen, beautiful picture of the diversity. This is what people want. If you're talking about people who were born in different countries, that's a level of diversity. But if you're talking about the people within a Kenyan community, diversity is not which country you were born. Diversity means which tribe you're coming from. In Australian forms, usually they ask, are you Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander or not? This is only one small aspect of diversity. This is not capturing the full diversity. Diversity within Aboriginal community is to respect the diversity of the ethnic backgrounds and the spiritual beliefs. There are 340 plus Aboriginal tribes and clans here in Australia for the last 120 years as one of the longest lasting surviving culture here. So this list is supported by a wider, broader demographic data such as age. We differentiate between sex at birth and the gender identity. So we are the first diversity analytic platform that differentiate between these two elements. Mutuality, which I'm going to talk about in a second. And always organizations want to measure one of their internal factor versus these diversity factors, their happiness, their caring responsibilities, their tenure, their et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So all the system and features leave that. Why inclusive data set matters? I'm just providing you a small example. I moved to Australia about 8 years ago. Recently, I participated in the census, Australian census, which runs every 5 years. Because of COVID, it took 6 years now. And there's a very limited list of about 200 cultural backgrounds and asked One option was Asian, and one option was Middle Eastern African. Middle Eastern African was grouped together. So for someone like me who come from Persia, if you say who's Asian, you say, yeah, you are from Asia. Same as everyone in Afghanistan or Pakistan or Iraq or Kafkaz, Azerbaijan, Armenia, they're all Asians. But grouping that part of the world with Africa, I feel that I do not exist. I don't see myself in those data sets. That freak out people. People do not engage with incomplete data. Mutuality, another very important topic here. So for diversity to serve as an advantage and for companies to be successful, the diversity of their workforce should be synchronized with the community they are doing business in. This degree of similarity between the diversity of organizations and the community, or with different parts of the organization, is known as mutuality. So we term this as mutuality. So high representation builds a healthy relationship between an organization and its customers, and it leads to better customer service. Again, this area until now was analytically neglected. So again, we in another paper that, can I ask my colleagues to put the link of the paper in the chat box, so anyone interested in reading more details about how to measure diversity or mutuality, the papers that I put in the chat box. When the representation is lacking, the first symptom is resentment. So again, until now, this concept was analytically neglected. So we come up with an approach to measure the angle between your team and the community outside, or between different departments of your team. Literally, it means balance. So your team and the community you serve in, and your team or your client base, they all should be representative of each other. What's the benefit? Being more responsive, healthy, more opportunities, business performance. It's not only doing this because it's good, it's because it improves the performance. That's a double benefit. We usually been asked, how much diversity is good? Can you give us a recipe for diversity? Can you give us a prescription for diversity? And we say that, look at the outside of the window, see how people on the street look like, try to be representative of the community you are doing the business. If you have 5% with disability in the community, are you doing your bit to recruit 5% of those people? If you have 20% of the people with some sort of neurodiversity or learning disability, are you doing your bit? If you have a 50-50 gender balance in the community outside, do you represent that? So this is the way we do. And what we do, this concept simply explains the diversity that we need here in the heart of Melbourne, which is in the matter of a kilometer from the land that I'm standing at the moment, which is historically known as the Wurundjeri land, the Aboriginal owners of this land. The diversity that we need here is different than the diversity that you may need in Paris or in Kiev, or if you're working in a rural area of Sao Paulo. How much diversity? Mutuality. I really think that the time is my enemy here. So there is the previous study was about how to measure diversity. We continued our work trying to understand what is the different understanding or relative importance of each of these pillars between different countries. So what we did, we started this work. We really would like to continue this work, this research. We went to 3 countries, Australia, France, and Pakistan. Surveyed about 600 plus people per each country. The data was normalized, same number of people, big cities, almost same time, almost same age group, and asked people about what is the relative importance of these elements of the culture. And what we received was extremely interesting. Unfortunately, I cannot go through the details again. all the charts. There are about 50 plus charts and analysis in the papers that they are available for free to download. For example, in Australia, the relative value of individuals clustered by age, placed on 4 categories of ethnicity, country of birth, language, worldview, or religions, it indicates that with the exception of the older people above 60 and younger people below 20, the others almost think the same across different age groups. However, the older generation consider slightly religion as the most important aspect of their culture, but in younger generations, it declines. They consider the ethnicity as the most aspect of their culture. It's slightly above the language that they speak. About the education level, interestingly, it didn't have a meaningful relationship with the definition of their identity. So from the people who study at school level to the people who had master's degree or above, they had almost same definition of their identity and same definition of the relative importance of each pillar of the culture in their groups. And the last but not the least, about the gender, which was really interesting. Gender plays a role in attitudes toward culture, with all gender groups giving different rankings to the 4 categories. We could see that women, as an average, give a higher ranking to the importance of religion in their identity. So for the average women in our research, women consider religion one of the most important of their identity. Exactly the same pattern happened in respondents from Pakistan, and exactly the same pattern happened in the people from France, with the difference that in Pakistan, the relative importance of religion was much higher compared to France, which was the lowest, and Australia was standing in the middle. This was the final general average understanding of this. So as an average, in France, people consider their ethnicity is the most important aspect of their identity. This is the way they identify themselves, with 60% of the importance in who they are, which is really ironic because in France, it's not legal to ask people's ethnicity backgrounds. It's not in their census. They don't ask it's illegal to ask what's your ethnicity background. If you have anyone from France, I would like to hear from you. If you go to Pakistan, it's exactly the opposite. Religion is the most aspect of their identity. And in Australia, ethnicity is the most important of the identity, but slightly above the other factors such as religion or language or country of birth. What it says that the average Pakistani people in the group that we surveyed, they consider themselves first Muslim, then someone born in Pakistan or someone speaking Baluchi, for example. And the average people is living in France. They are first French, and then someone is speaking French, and their religion is the least important aspect of their identity. And people in Australia are those numbers. This really explains a lot of challenges, a lot of conflicts that happen around the world. So everything in our world is intercultural. We are in an intercultural setting, global village. What these numbers tell you, how you can incorporate these insights in your team, what these numbers tell you to use in your teams. I'm segueing to the end of my presentation. So few words that I would like to share with you before I finish my presentation is diversity is like a Rubik's Cube. If you ever solve the Rubik's Cube, diversity is like that. You cannot say that I solved one dimension of this Rubik's Cube. Now I'm going to fix the other side. Now I'm going to fix the other side. It doesn't work like that. If you ever solve the Rubik's Cube, you have to have a holistic view of all aspects of this cube and solve it at the same time. Recently, I wrote a blog post about diversity is like an amazing Rubik Cube. If we can share that in the chat message. For example, many organizations start with gender equity. Don't take me wrong, that's a fantastic subject. But usually when you have a focus only on gender, what happens with gender versus position level? What happens between gender versus age? I've seen in many, many organizations who have a gender focus, they achieve that gender parity. But as you go higher to the organization, there's less gender parity. You see a larger number of females in middle management level and a lower number of females in the top management. This is not fully diverse. Or what we see, however they achieve the gender full gender balance, the average age of females is between 5 to 10 years younger than the male people in the team. This is not age versus gender balance. But organizations who have a focus on diversity as a general, they achieve gender equity, gender balance as a very sweet result. So isn't that easier that we start with having a full holistic approach to diversity? And this is not possible unless you know what's happening in your team, who you are in your team. So this diversity atlas is, I usually introduce that as like an X-ray of an organization, which shows every bit of your team. The second one is the importance of inclusive data. I mentioned a couple of examples that why this is important. And nowadays, the challenge is not how to measure diversity. The challenge is not having an inclusive data. Mutuality is a solution. And my last word is data is beautiful. Data technology are absolutely mesmerizing. But it's really important to read the humanity beyond this data, to see what's happening beyond this data. People are not human. As a futurist, as a technologist, as a data scientist, I strongly believe that we need a human factor of this work. We need someone to be able to interpret the results in a day-to-day basis in the organizations. It's not about hiring people by data. This diversity mapping and diversity analytics is not about hiring people by diverse backgrounds. It's about to know who you are in your team, and no matter of which background, which ethno-linguistic or religious background you're coming from, feeling included in your team. This is the human aspect of, humanity aspect of the area that we're working on. I'd like to come back to my first question, that in this exciting, beautiful journey of measuring and mapping diversity, or simply to say, knowing who we are, where you are standing in this space. Are you seeing yourself in a starting point, in the middle of the journey, or a pro? Thank you very much. Again, from the land of Wurundjeri, the Kulin Nation people in Melbourne, Australia. And if there's any question, I would like to take.
Rezza, thank you very much for your very insightful presentation, full of data and useful information for all of our participants. It's not a coincidence that our attendees were bombarding our chat with the questions to you, but luckily your colleagues Peter and Quincy have been answering all of those questions as they went. So I don't really see unanswered questions in the chat so far. So what I suggest, so I just want to thank you very much, and want to invite our attendees who are watching this session to attend stage number 2, while we have Inclusivity Awards presentations coming from small companies with a number of employees not exceeding 50 people. We believe this is very important for small businesses to advance their diversity and inclusion journeys wherever they are, as we look into examples of their biggest peers from global corporations, Fortune 500 companies, and so on. So I want to thank you so much for this presentation again, and your colleagues for being so active in the chat. And invite everyone again to stage number 2 to watch the Inclusivity Award, as well as today number 2 tomorrow, which will be also full of insights and useful presentations. Thank you again, and see you soon.
Thank you very much. Bye, everyone.